All right, so KlayDay, baby. It was
Yes.
KlayDay. It finally arrived at Chase Center over the weekend, and boy, did not disappoint. After a 2-year absence from the NBA, Klay Thompson returned to the court against the Cavaliers and posted 17 points on 7 of 18 shooting. We knew he was going to get him up, and he got him up.
He got him.
But more importantly, they finally gave the NBA world another look at the Splash Brothers. I was kind of waiting to see what would happen with Steph because he's been in slope, but the Warriors team, they seem to be just marching on towards a Western Conference title. What are your thoughts, Jason? What are your takeaways after watching Klay play on Sunday on KlayDay?
You watch so much sports, it's easy sometimes, I think, to get cynical about stuff, especially about teams that are dominant teams. The Warriors have been a team in the mix, the last couple of seasons aside, for almost a decade now. And it's easy to just kind of write off a lot of stuff as this kind of KlayDay branding as narrative and, stuff to get people to click, etc.
Yeah.
But, watching the game, super exciting. It was really Klay, a little bit of rust, but he moved well. He had a dunk that was I was making dinner and peeking around at the TV, and I just went oh my God! My girlfriend was like, what happened? Did you burn something? I was like, no, Klay just dunked. But watching the way that team interacts, listening to the post-game conversations with Klay and with Steve Kerr and with Steph Curry, the way that team relates to each other is just really cool. It's really cool. Draymond, notably was on the court for just a possession. He wanted to be out there when Klay got his first basket, had the first play called for him, was out there, after Klay's first game back after 900 plus days. That kind of relationship, that kind of bonding that you don't see that very often, and he subbed out right away, but you just don't. That is really special, and the way that team relates to each other is special. And I think there's something about Steph and Klay being the children of pro players that allows them to maybe appreciate how hard it is to get to the place that they have reached. And it was just really cool. It was really cool to see him back. Again, I can't remember a time that a player did something like that kind of display where Draymond was like, I want to be out here for my teammate, and then I'm going to sub off and continue my rehab for my calf injury. That is just, you don't see that a lot. It was really cool. What'd you think of it?
You definitely don't see that a lot. And that's a culture that's been built, starting with Mark Jackson. I always have to say, Mark Jackson built that team, and he built a culture around that team that you can see that culture is thriving for years and years. Even when things weren't going well, the culture, there was arguments, and we know everything that happened, and we know, but that culture, the way that you can tell if a culture is strong is how does it bounce back, or how does it survive when things happen. And they had a bad season, and everyone was talking about the dynasty was over, and they kept their culture intact because you can see it by, like you said, acts from Draymond, and even just going back to Klay. And it's so mentally hard. It's mentally tough to rehab one injury. I mean, you rehab an ACL injury, and you hear people talk about it. It changes them. It matures them. Klay not only did an ACL, but then he went and rehabbed one of the worst injuries in sports. The Achilles is one of the hardest injuries to come back from. Everybody knows it. So he not only did one, but he did a back-to-back rehab, which is so tough because even with me, I have to always knock on wood when I say this, but in my career, I only had one injury, and I tore my ankle in 3 places, and I was blessed to be able to come back the same season. I didn't even miss a full season for it. So I don't even know what it's like to put in that much time and that much energy. Because when you put in that much time and effort, usually you got a game on Sunday or Monday or sometime that week.
2 years.
That you can show for
years,
it. He went 2 years without getting the glory of put the work for your ethic, you want to show your work, and he went 2 years without getting able to show his work. And so on KlayDay, the whole sports world backed him and almost supported him in his return. And I thought it was one of those sports moments where, we've been hearing a lot about players coming in and out of health and safety protocols and their returns. And we don't even hear so much about injuries this season as we do all the other different things. But this was one of those sports moments where the fans were engaged. And at Golden State, those fans were definitely going to be engaged. But it wasn't just Golden State fans. I saw, shouts to my guy, King Josiah. He showed that he did a meme about when NBA Twitter and Golden State Warriors Twitter put down, and joined in together. And it was basically like, people like joining in, but it was a moment for all of sports, not just Golden State fans, not just, Klay Thompson fans. It was a sports moment that happened in KlayDay. And so I was happy. Look, I was excited. I called the Hawks game that day at 3:30. We had a Hawks game. Unfortunately, we lost. Come back home, guys. 10-12 on the road. We'll talk about that later. But I was excited that our Hawks game was at 3:30 so that I could be sitting front and center for KlayDay. So just to kind of give it the magnitude, that's how I felt.
Clay's post game was really cool. Very extended. He was very open about what he was feeling, things going through his mind during the plays. For the dunk, he was asked what he was feeling for that dunk that he had, which is crazy because that's not even something that you would consider in Klay's repertoire, like pre the injuries. So the adrenaline must have been flowing really thick. But he said, I just saw the rim, it obviously played, really sustained his confidence. The fact that he had that kind of pop and that kind of leaping, something again that he hasn't shown that much of previous to the injuries. But what was really cool about it was in those extended remarks, he talked a lot about the Warriors training staff and all the people that helped get him there. He wasn't just like, oh, I've been working in the lab for 2 years, grinding it out. He was talking about all the people that, were working with him whenever he wanted to work, that were getting his nutrition down, they were getting his training regimen going for him, and we're just watching him taking care to make sure that he came back the right way. If you read stuff around the team, it seemed like he could have come back weeks ago, maybe, as much as like a month ago, but they wanted to take their time with it, make sure it was right. They circled this particular date on the calendar, and it all paid off. It was just really cool. And you're right. It was a cool, event that reached across fandoms.
Yes.
Klay is a really interesting figure in that way, and that he's kind of become like this cult guy,
Yes.
Not the biggest star on the team, not the biggest personality on the team. That's Trey. Biggest star on the team is Steph. But he's got, I don't know if there's a player in the NBA that has the Q rating that he has. I've never heard anybody.
I completely agree because he has his boat, his dog. Yeah. He has things that people gravitate to. His personality type, he found a way to stay Klay even amongst everything that was happening to him. And I think people gravitated to that, knowing everything he was going through. And not to mention, he hopped on the broadcast a couple games too. And I think that really took him to another place with people because they got to kind of just hear him and see him and who he is. And people liked it. So to his defense, when people get to know him, they like him.
Ed Zitron, who is a writer and a PR professional in the Bay Area, tweeted about Klay. One time he was next to me on a plane. He spent the entire time with no headphones, writing in a notebook stuff like, "You're more than just a player." It's like stuff like that. Stuff like that is just so funny to me because Klay famously is a very old-fashioned guy. He gets the print edition of the paper in front of his locker. He reads the paper, is not on phones a lot, has the boat, did an interview wearing the captain's hat.
Yep.
Is just an interesting guy. And you add on to that just has a hunger and a nose for the big moment. Has some of the most emblematic Warriors moments where he just shoots them from out of a game, back into a playoff series. It's just is a really fun player, and especially in a league where personalities matter more than others, the NBA, he's just got one of the most fun ones. He's just a fun guy to think about.
And, he obviously it takes two to tango, but he's the reason that they became the Splash Brothers, because we started to know that Steph was going to be Steph at a certain point. But what made it this phenomenon, to your point, is like Steph would torch a team, hit them with 6 threes, and it's like, oh my God, this is Steph's quarter. And then here comes the third quarter, and Klay would come in and make 7 of his own. And it's like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? Like, that's kind of like the Klay phenomenon and what he is. It was that he can lay dormant for a certain amount of time while Steph goes about roasting and toasting the opponents. And just the moment you think that you got Steph under control, he checks out or goes to the bench, or they're even still in together. Here comes Klay with his
11
torch.
threes. So, 11 threes against OKC in game 6, that kind of stuff.
And that's exactly it. It's that moment that he finds his moments, and boy, does he set it off. So, I mean, I don't think that there's there was so much buzz around even a Kyrie return just because of what was going on. Right. But what we saw with this KlayDay, I mean, I think it was good for the sport. I know the NBA got to be happy about it alongside all the talk that's going on with All-Stars. So I know that these moments are huge, not only for Klay, but these are big moments for the league.
You mentioned your injury and how fortunate you were to not suffer from serious injury over the course of your career. But even coming back from it, like, how soon do the jitters go away, and do you trust your body again? Because Klay talked a lot about that, of just being like, it taking a little bit, a couple of times running up and down the court to feel like he wouldn't think about it. He could just go. Like when he went in for that dunk, he talked about, I just saw the rim. I didn't see defenders. I just saw the rim. How long did it take for you to feel like, I know my body, I'm back?
Mine was a little bit different because mine wasn't as serious as theirs, because I want to say that to make sure people understand I'm not acting like I'm a hero. But for mine, I started playing way before I should have played. So I was like, we basically put a cast on my ankle. We put so much ankle tape that it was like, I couldn't cut off the tape myself. I probably shouldn't have been playing, but hey, this is sports. So I was already playing when I was so gimpy. Like, if you could literally go back and watch footage of when I was playing at that time, I was running with a clear, distinct limp. And so I was trying to make my body trust me. And my body wasn't ready. My body was like, no, we're not ready. And I was like, no, we're ready. So I was like kind of the reverse. But when you think about stuff like that, I think about a Derrick Rose. I remember when he came back from his injury and the doctors were saying, he's cleared medically. Everything medically is cleared, but he had to clear that hurdle mentally of, do I trust myself? Do I run? Can I jump as high? Am I going to get injured again? And I think that with Klay, they're probably, it would be completely understandable if he had this huge barrier, because he trusted himself. If he trusted himself after the first time, after his ACL, and then he goes out and gets another injury for whatever reason, it's going to make you apprehensive automatically. Absolutely. So for him to just say he even saw the rim and just punched it and dunked it, that's like a huge win rehab wise, because you had 2 injuries back to back. But I'm just saying, like, when you get into those type of situations, there's no clear-cut date. There's no clear-cut medical, this player, it's been 6 months, he should be good to go. It really is a mental game at this point. So, I mean, it's not even just the rust, too. It's the rhythm of the game, the speed of the game. You got to catch back up. This is people that are playing at the high. These are the most elite athletes in the world.
And there's no mercy out there. Like, nobody's like, I'm not going to go at Klay hard because he's just coming back and it's Klay. People are like, I want to shut this down. I'm not here. The Cavaliers are having it can't be said enough. They are having a great season. Like, if you look at their advanced numbers, there's a world in which they are like a title contender. They're playing great. They're not sitting here being like, well, let's let Klay get off. And no, you go right at him. You try and take
him. Everybody wants to spoil the party. Like a ring ceremony night, you're trying to spoil the party. Yes. You're knocked out of the playoffs and you still got games to go. Well, guess what? Spoiler alert. Like,
spoiler.
That's just any competitor is not going to want to. So for Klay to even, and I know he got like 18 shots up in 20 minutes. Okay, yeah. He's a splash brother. He's going to let it fly. You better not have been surprised about that. But even still, for him to still be able to compete, dunk on people, I mean, he has to, like, and what you hear athletes, you have to manage expectations. And so for Klay, he should definitely be excited for that game 1 coming off of 2-year absence. He should be ecstatic.
This podcast is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy, the best and easiest way to play fantasy sports. It was KlayDay on Sunday. You know what it was. You know the calendar. You were watching TV. And if you weren't following along with Underdog, you're missing out, folks. Through Underdog's slick mobile app and easy-to-use website, slicker than a dolphin's dorsal fin, you can draft your favorite NBA players in minutes and compete for cash prizes every night of the week. Just head to UnderdogFantasy.com or the better version. Download their app from the App Store / Google Play Store, and Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100 as long as you use promo code Takeline. So what are you waiting for? It's unclear what you're waiting for. Sign up with the code Takeline, get your first deposit match, and draft your NBA dream team today. Well, since we've last talked to each other, our respective teams, the Knicks and the Atlanta Hawks, have had some ups and had some downs. Your Hawks are getting healthy right now, which is a great sign. My Knicks have endured some really emblematic wins, like one over the Celtics over the weekend, but then followed up by a quick loss. Both teams have had to deal with players in and out due to COVID. Renee, how are you feeling about your team? The Hawks are currently sitting at 17-22. A little disappointing, but like as I said, you guys are getting healthy. How are you feeling right now?
You know, I'm feeling intrigued. And the reason I say that, I called the Hawks game on Sunday. I'm going to be calling the Hawks game on Wednesday. I'm calling another game on Friday. Like, I'm going to be all the way in on the foxhole for the Hawks. And the reason I'm intrigued is because the players are saying the right things, as they should. And we, like you said, there's been a lot of inconsistency with health and safety protocols. But honestly, that's been a lot of teams. So everybody's almost just wipe that whole thing out, because everybody's dealing with that same thing. So I want to see, because we love to do this. We go on the road and we don't play great, and then we come home and we figure it out and we roll off a whole string of runs. This is also around the time last year where we had a coaching change and we hit a super another level. So it's like we're at the same position we were last year, almost in the same type of circumstances. So I'm really intrigued to see, well, what is this year going to look like? Because it's not, we're starting to see with the Hawks, it's not no magic button that you flip and all of a sudden you're a good team and all of a sudden everything works out. No, we're back at the exact same position we were last year. We're coming home for 10 of the next 12 games. What are we going to do?
Yeah.
What are we going to look like? Are we going to get back to that defensive team that we knew? Is the block party going to be open in the A again? Like, I want to see, like, where are we going to take this? Because we're at that point of the fork in the road where, all right, we were here last year. It's not over yet, but we can't coast till All-Star, because that's what a lot of teams do. You know, you just try to get to All-Star weekend where you can recharge and revamp. We don't have that luxury. So what are we going to do leading into All-Star? What are we going to do after All-Star? Because I know that Trey has broken a lot of records. You know, he 17 straight games with 25 or more, something really wild like that. But he said it himself, those individual awards don't really feel so great if your team is struggling. So I want to see what we're going to do, just kind of at this fork in the road. But what are your, like, what have you been seeing? What are your thoughts? What's going on in your world?
Well, I wanted to ask you first, with all the health and safety stuff and so many players coming in and out, and players, you know, NBA guys have joked about it, like they weren't quite sure like who some of their teammates were at certain times over the course of the last couple of weeks. How important does coaching become, and how do you, because I would imagine you got to keep it simple. If you're having guys come in and out, you've got players that like are joining the team for 10 days, you know, and are probably not familiar with the schemes you're running. How important does the stuff you run and the way the coach communicates then become, you know, across the board? It seems like you really want to simplify it for the newcomers.
No, I mean, you have to. And Coach Nate McMillan, which is the head coach of the Hawks, who's now out right now for health and safety protocols. But while he
there you have it.
While he was there, he had made a statement that said, for the past 3 games, we've had to show our players where the locker room was at shoot around.
Yeah.
So
that's crazy. To kind of put it in perspective,
sometimes it's not even about the plays. It's about like even getting the players to the trainers and getting them to the right actual locations and then figuring out the plays. Because if you're showing somebody the locker room and shoot around, well, there's a lot they're taking in. So you do have to simplify it. I think the thing about basketball is there's only a certain amount of things that you can do. Like if I go to a team and they tell me horns, they tell me 5 down, they tell me 4 across, they tell me like there's certain words that I just know I don't have to learn that play. Oh, we're running horns. All right. We're running 4 up, the 4 pops. Okay. The 5, like, you know, like there's certain things that players should know when you're at that level that you don't have to teach, but there's still a chemistry thing that you can't teach.
Yeah.
So yes, you might be able to tell them we're going to keep it simple. We're going to do wing pick and rolls, which is what we call 5 up. We'll do a pin down, which is 2 down. You can say all of those things, but the team chemistry part, no teams are going to be able to have. So that's why it's so important that if you have veterans on your team, and everybody always laughs about the veteran signs and, oh, why did you give that guy that much money? This is where the veterans earn all of their money.
Because they know what to do. They've been around the block. You don't need to tell them twice. They know exactly what you're running.
And they're going to take that new guy and they're going to sit the new guy beside the veteran in the locker room so that the veteran can talk to them even after the pregame speech. All right, so just so you know, when you come in, make sure you do this, or, you know, what we need from you is this guy's going to, like, that veteran is going to talk them through all of that stuff. And even on the court, like, they're going to do it on the court. So when you have those veterans, and everybody always talking about, like, you know, who was it? Haslam, Udonis Haslam down there. But look at what Miami doing. I'm just saying, when you see teams with strong veteran presence, Phoenix Suns, well, yeah, when you start to have all this inconsistency with COVID and health and safety protocols, the veterans are the ones when you see the teams keeping it nice and level. Those teams typically have a very strong veteran base.
Well, let's talk about my New York Knicks. They on Thursday, they had one of the best wins of the season with Evan Fournier going for a career crazy career high 41 points, 10 3-pointers, 10 of 14.
But he always scorches the Celtics, though, right? Like,
he's the Michael Jordan of playing against the Celtics? It doesn't make any sense.
Ask about me.
I'm like, listen, there's got to be some kind of way that we can, like, Groundhog Day Evan Fournier so that every game he thinks he's playing the Celtics. Just have the coaches and everybody else, like, put Celtic stuff up, like, every single game. So he only thinks he's playing that team. But so Evan Fournier went crazy. And then RJ Barrett, who was ice cold, like, in the freezer. I think he had only hit 3 shots in the whole game to that point, banked a 3, won the game at the buzzer. Crazy. Then they come back over the weekend and health and safety protocols. We were their head again. Lots of players out, including Evan Fournier. Lost to the Celtics. I know they only scored 75 points, which was like a 90s score. But the big conversation was that during that Celtics game, Julius Randle, who has had a down season, let's just admit it, right? I think your Hawks had something to do with giving the league the kind of formula for how you can stymie a team where Julius Randle is the team's best player. Hawks gave the league the blueprint on how you can shut that down. And Julius has had a down season. There have been boos at the Garden occasionally, but Julius had a really nice game Thursday against the Celtics and hit a big shot, came down and gave a thumbs down to the crowd. He was asked about it. What did you mean by that? And he was like, it meant shut the fuck up. He's then fine by that. I don't think this is necessarily a big deal. But Renee, where do you come down on clapping back at fans and fans booing? Where do we go with that? Because I can see both sides of it.
I see both sides of it as well. But so let me just, first of all, I grew up in West Virginia.
Yeah.
So I will just start there. So I grew up in a place where, they're going to get turned up, and I dealt with that. And then I went to UConn. We're not the most beloved, contrary to what people think. There's a lot of people that don't like to see people.
Really? People don't love you? People are not,
people don't really, you know what I'm saying? So, like, I'm very accustomed to getting booed. Honestly, for me, that's kind of a little bit of fuel. Like, I don't really care if you boo me, but if you really are getting into it as the fans, like, oh, y'all took time and effort, y'all created chance for us, it's lit, like, it's turned up. We had some real battles with Rutgers in the Big East days, and it was turned up. So I've never been accustomed to clapping back at the fans. The way you clap back at the fans is you hit them with a wah wah. knocking a three and it gets really quiet in there, it gets, and then all of a sudden you don't hear anything. It gets quiet. There's a timeout. But Julius Randle, I know everybody's built different, and so Julius Randle, he hit him with the thumbs down. I didn't even know what it was when I watched it actually live.
It came from the Mets. So the New York Mets were the first New York area team to really start doing this, that fans were booing them. And then whenever they'd get a hit, Mets players would do the thumbs down like
that's crazy. Yeah. So I didn't even get the reference, I'm like, I thought he was saying the defense is a thumbs down. I'm like, oh wow, he's trashing him right in his face. I love it. Give me more. So, I thought that was what was happening. But it goes to a bigger thing. I just, like when I even said those scenarios, I talked about like the fans booing. They weren't our home fans. So when I was at UConn and it was a home game, you can forget it. You're not going to out-boo us at a home game at UConn. The UConn fans don't do that. And so there are fans that do that, though. And I think that's tough because when you think about, I know nobody cares. Athletes make a lot of money. We have a great life, blah, blah, blah. I know no one cares. But when you think about the lifestyle of an athlete, every time you go to work, your performance is on display for people to critique, and they critique it loudly on social media. When you leave work, you take your work home. That's a real thing. People get nasty on the court. We've seen fans spit, throw food, throw things. Athletes have to take a lot. I get it. It comes with the business. But athletes have to take a lot. One of the things for me as an athlete that I took pride in is that I played for the name on the front of my jersey, which was my team, and I played for the fans. Like, I love that the fans got hype when I would dive on the ground. And yes, I had floor burns for the next week, but it was worth it. But when you have fans that are booing you, your own home team fans, that's tough for me. Like, that's tough because I'm a player that, like, I grind for the fans. So if y'all booing me and I'm grinding for y'all to put on for my home team or our home city and y'all are booing me, that's a hard pill for me to swallow. So I get it. Sometimes teams don't perform to the level that the fans would want them to. And you know what? If a team isn't giving their all, okay, I get it. Like, as fans, you paid your good hard-earned money. I get it. But I'm one of those players that, like, I gave it everything I had. And so my home court fans were booing me. Yeah, that's tough. Like, that's a tough pill to swallow.
I see it as, it's like a lose-lose where both sides have a point, right? Listen, is it great that the New York fans are booing their own team in the Garden? No, but at the same time, the fervor that we have seen from Knicks fans, okay, we'll just call it fervor.
Okay, great word.
When it's hitting and when it's good, it is celebrated across sports. People, how many times have we heard, oh man, when the Knicks are good, it's great for the league.
Insanity.
Yeah. Like, people love it, right? What the flip side of that coin is, when you have a fan base that is that plugged in, that cares that much, et cetera, they're going to boo sometimes. Okay. It's not great, but it happens. From the other side of it, it's unreasonable to expect Julius Randle to not feel bad about it. He's going to feel a type of way.
Of course.
His partner and his kid are always in the stands, and here he is getting booed. That's going to hit you different. You're going to feel a type of way about that. And that's just human nature. Getting to this particular incident, it's just like a no-win. Julius doing the thumbs down. Ultimately, it's, the fans are not going to stop doing it. And now you're going to have this conversation about what you meant and we're not just going to be able to let it go. If we lived in a world where you give the thumbs down, the fans know what it is, we've all moved on from it. I'm sure there is literally not one Knicks fan that was sitting in the stands being like, how dare Julius give us this? No one cared. No one cared about it. But what happens next? You're going to have the beat reporters whose job it is to ask the question, what did you mean by that? Now he's going to expound on it. He says, I meant shut the fuck up. And now there's
that was wild. That was wild. That was the wild part, Jason. It's like, of course the player is going to feel some type of way about the fans booing. Of course. And should he have reacted? Yes or no? But if he hit the thumbs down, right? And then I get to the media press conference, and they're like, what'd you hit the thumbs down for? You better think of something creative to say.
Something else. Something cryptic. You can't
just tell the truth. I'm sorry. You can't just, even if that was the truth, Julius Randle, you can't tell
Agreed.
a world of Knicks fans, the Bing Bong world, you can't tell this fan base of all fan bases. Like, if you said that to the Utah Jazz fan base, you know what? It might have had a little sizzle to it, and then it would have died down. But you mean to tell me you told the New York Knicks fan base to shut up? Oh, baby.